A wealthy guy leaves his wife and children behind, and 15 years later, he runs into his daughter at Denver International Airport, and is surprised to learn that there was a lot going on that summer afternoon, including 25-year-old Emma Wilson. The security guard moved quickly through the terminal, her uniform immaculate, and her eyes were alert, and her radio crackled with an urgent transmission from Officer Wilson. "There is an unruly passenger at gate 23, and I need you to intervene." "Immediately, Emma," she responded and proceeded to the location. Upon closer inspection, she identified a middle-aged man with frenzied gestures. The desk attendant exuded an alcoholic odor. "Sir," Emma forcefully positioned herself between the man and stated, "I need you to calm down." The terrified attendant turned to face Emma, his eyes blood-stained, and his slurred voice, "You don't comprehend. I have to catch this aircraft. It's an issue." Emma maintained her poise in the face of death, yet something about his face, she felt uneasy because of a familiarity she couldn't place. "Sir, I get it, I understand your frustration, but please don't bother the other passengers. Come with me so we can talk about this in privacy." The man staggered back, the words touched home. "Slightly, no, you don't get it. I need to see my daughter." For a minute Emma felt as though she had been hit in the stomach, seeing glimpses of she shook her as she recalled a man leaving, a door closing, and a child crying, putting the past aside. "Sir, this is your final opportunity. Join me," Emma murmured, her voice quivering a little. "Calmly, or I'll have to call for backup." The man moved forward in his "You don't realize that I'm" before he could reach out and touch her. Liam, a teenage flight attendant, took over at the conclusion. "Hey, buddy, I believe that's..." Emma gave Liam a thankful glance as he said, "Enough, let's go for a walk and cool off." She tried to calm her beating heart by taking a long breath and gently guiding the man away. Emma nodded as the desk clerk inquired, "Heart, are you okay?" Emma was still rattled, that I'm trying to grin. "But yeah, everything is under control. I appreciate you warning us." Emma couldn't help but notice how the stranger kept looking over his shoulder as she watched Liam escort the man away. His eyes glowed at her with a feeling she was unable to interpret. Emma's shift went by quickly, but she couldn't get the episode out of her head. That man had a quality in both his eyes and his words that at the end of the day, when she was getting ready to depart, Liam found it really disturbed her. "Hey Emma, the man from earlier in the locker room ended up getting detained. He was inebriated." Emma nodded, appreciating the update. "For filling in, Liam. You arrived just on schedule." Liam grinned and put a hand on Emma. Hesitated. "Are you okay? Whenever you appeared to be extremely rattled up." "Yes, I briefly had the odd impression that I recognized him from." Liam gave her a worried glance someplace. "If you ever need to chat, let's talk. I'll be all right," Emma said, forcing a grin as she walked out of the airport. "Thank you, Liam." Emma kept thinking about the man's last comments that night because he was leading away. "I simply wanted an opportunity to clarify and request pardon the next time." Emma had black circles under her eyes when she arrived at the airport in the morning. Her mind was full of unclear memories and unresolved questions, and she hardly slept when she walked into the security room. She was met with applause from yesterday. Wilson, her supervisor, praised her co-workers for their excellent work and Emma managed a smile while adding, "You handled that coffee like a pro." She wanted to express her gratitude and convey her suspicions about the odd familiarity she had felt, but she couldn't articulate it since the words became stuck in her throat. Emma attempted to concentrate on her work throughout the day, but she didn't even understand. But each time she closed her eyes, her thoughts returned to the incident. When she heard the man's tremulous voice pleading to see his daughter during Emma chose to wander through the terminal during her lunch break in order to decompress. As she passed a corner, she heard curious. She approached the muffled voices coming from a storage area in silence. Emma recognized a female voice whispering, "Frank, we can't keep doing this." One of the flight attendants, Melissa, said in a male voice, "It'll be okay." Emma recognized Frank as her boss right away, and no one will ever know. Her heart was pounding, and she knew she should go, but her feet seemed stuck to the floor through the door that was slightly open. she saw Frank and Emma finally succeeded in embracing Melissa in a private embrace while feeling like an intruder, leave her with her head spinning after learning that Frank was married to how could he do this the rest of the time to Claire, a beautiful woman Emma thought of as a friend. Emma stayed away from Frank whenever she could because she was afraid that as she got ready to leave that evening, her face might reveal what she knew. Got a message from CLA requesting that they meet at a cafe in the area. CLA was already there, distractedly making a cup of tea when Emma arrived. Emma's normally happy, scared face was strained and anxious. "I appreciate you coming, Claire." Emma sat down, feeling a pang, and forced a smile, saying, "I need to talk to someone." Of guilt. "What's happening?" Claire Soleil inhaled deeply, her eyes glimmering. The words, "I believe he is cheating on me," struck Emma like a blow. "It's Frank." She had the instinct to tell Claire what she had witnessed, but something prevented her from doing so. How could Emma have broken Claire's heart in such a way? "Why do you think that?" CLA began describing a slew of questionable behavior and covert phone conversations while attempting to maintain a neutral tone of voice. Emma listens to her internal struggle growing as she experiences unexplained mood swings over time. Emma Claire wiped away a tear as she said, "I don't know what to do. I'm in love with Frank, but I can't continue to live this way." Emma reached out and squeezed. "I'm very sorry that you're going through this, Claire. Perhaps you should discuss." She made her way home. Emma was appreciative of the support and nodded to Frank. Claire. Her fear of losing her career and her loyalty to Claire conflicted. Emma tried to seem normal when she confronted Frank the following day, but each time she saw during a team meeting, Frank experienced a surge of rage and disappointment. Emma noticed a change in Frank's countenance as their eyes locked, and he was aware of it. She was aware that Frank had contacted her shortly, before Emma was ready to leave at the end of the day. "Emma, may we speak privately tomorrow?" he requested in his tone as he entered his office, easygoing, but Emma felt a knot in her gut because of his penetrating eyes. "Is the boss there?" Frank gritted his teeth and said, No, I just want to review a few things regarding your performance." Emma nodded, understanding that there would be a lot to discuss. She exited the office. Her thoughts were racing more than her performance. What did Frank want? Was he will bribe her and threaten her? And among all of this confusion, the picture of the inebriated man from the day before came back to her in two scenarios. Despite their apparent lack of connection, both are forcing Emma to reevaluate what she believed to be true regarding the people in her immediate vicinity. Emma entered Frank's office the following morning. Frank grinned and pointed to the chair in front of him, saying, "Emma, you've been a model employee." Frank started off in a curiously amiable manner. "In fact, Emma blinked in surprise when she saw that Frank was considering you for a promotion. "Yes," I nodded and leaned forward. "But first we must talk about anything sensitive. You're a private individual, aren't you, Emma?" Emma's? Her heart was pounding, and she was aware of the direction this talk was taking. May have heard or seen anything that you misinterpreted. Frank kept smiling without opening his eyes. It would be unfortunate if your bright future was ruined by a misunderstanding. Emma felt furious. "Are you?" Frank was laughing, but his eyes were icy. Frank was threatening me, providing progress with a discretionary opportunity as easy as that. Emma got up. "I'll give it some thought," she said, trembling with rage as she hurried out of the office, disturbed by Frank's speech. Emma chose to concentrate on something. She took advantage of a calm moment because she was still unable to stop thinking about the man from the gate incident. Soon as she entered the date and flight in the passenger database, Emma discovered that her heart stopped. Wilson's last name was Jack Wilson. Her hands shaking, she continued to explore, and the fact she discovered astounded her. Chicago resident Jack Wilson, 55, divorced his daughter Emma. Her father was the one who made her world revolve. The information was rapidly printed out by the man who had abandoned her 15 years prior. Emma hurried outside and almost ran into Liam, but Liam was quick to catch her by the when he saw her face and Emma. His smile turned to worry. "What's wrong?" After some hesitation, Emma realized she had to ask Liam whether she could speak with her, and Emma's voice was quivering as they found a quiet corner in the terminal. Told Liam all about Frank and Jack and how she felt confined. Liam listened intently, and when Emma was done, he had a shocked and sympathetic expression on his face, grasped her hand and gently squeezed her, saying, "Emma, this is amazing. I'm here for you, okay?" Whatever happened, Emma was overcome with appreciation. "Thank you, Liam." "I'm not sure why," Liam remarked. "Let's take it one step at a time and see what we can do about any of this. First of all, Frank, you shouldn't feel compelled to do what he is doing since it is unlawful and evil." Emma nodded, feeling a bit more resilient with Liam's encouragement. "As for that's more tricky." Father Liam went on. "Would you like to visit him, Emma?" "I don't know, but I felt like screaming at him and demanding explanations when she bit her lip. Another part wants to act like this never happened, so perhaps you might try having a gentle conversation with him, like Liam recommended." Emma hesitantly consented to some closure using the data she had printed. She called Liam and was shocked by what she found. Her voice was hardly audible above a whisper. Liam gave her a hug, enabling Emma to finally release Jack, who is in the hospital and dying, out the tears she had been suppressing. "What would you like to do?" Liam inquired. Emma softly withdrew, dabbing at her eyes. "I must see him. I must understand why." Liam nodded. "Do you want me to accompany you?" Emma smiled weakly. "No, is something I must accomplish by myself, but I want to thank Liam for everything since Emma was ready to depart, but she was conflicted between fear and resolve, unsure of what to do to anticipate from this meeting, but she was aware that she required clarification before Emma considered how her life had completely changed in a short period of time while in the hospital. The father she believed she would never see again returned a few days ago, ill, and maybe her boss was using blackmail to conceal an affair while she was dying, and in the middle of despite everything, a surprising bond with Liam was growing as they arrived at the Emma stopped at the front desk of the hospital, her heart racing, saying, "I'm here to see," as she followed the nurse. Jack Wilson spoke in a tone that was firmer than she felt. Emma tried to prepare herself for what she was about to encounter as she moved down the hallway. 15 years of unresolved grievances and repressed rage are about to, "He's in here," the nurse whispered softly as she stopped in front of a room. Emma shook her head, saying, "No, I'll just let him know you're here." Jack was lying on the bed as Emma entered the hospital room, her heart racing. His eyes opened when he spotted her, looking frail and much older than his 55 years, without the effects of drinking this time. He realized this despite the fact that he hadn't seen her in years. His daughter Emma resembled his ex-wife Sarah, and his voice was "Is it true, Emma, that you stood still, unable to move?" Anticipated that her father would notice her so soon after years of suppressed feelings. Threatened to overflow. "Yes, it's me," she said at last, adding that Jack had attempted to sit up and was moaning, and Emma remarked, "Pain, I can't believe I found you at last. I didn't come for you. Voice cold, I came for myself, and if you were looking for me, I never left this town. You simply had to return to the airport where you left us, and I now need," Jack responded. "I know you deserve explanations," and Emma took a step forward, her fists were clenched as she walked to the bed. "Why did you abandon us?" Jack closed his eyes, and I could see the agony on his face. "I believed that I was being pursued by dangerous individuals while drowning in debt," Emma chuckled cruelly. "Protecting you by disappearing to protect Prot in the US. Understand how your protection helped us. My mother had to work 2 jobs, and I was raised without a. I am aware that Emma retreated when her father Jack extended a quivering hand toward her. Emma felt hot, and I regret it every day. I made a terrible mistake. For 15 years, Dad, she has been crying uncontrollably and has not spoken or called," Jack said in a husky voice. "I want nothing to come back." With feeling, but as time went on, it grew more difficult, and eventually I got Emma, feeling ill, glanced at him and noticed the tubes and monitors around for the first time. Jack said simply, "What's wrong with you?" "The doctors have terminal cancer." Remark, "I only have a few months left." Emma sat in silence to the bedside chair, exhausted. Jack grinned piteously. "Why did you come to the airport?" "I wanted to." Emma shook her and said, "See you one last time to ask for forgiveness if I could. After years of searching for you, I was confused how you found me." Jack acknowledged that I lacked the bravery to approach you when I eventually located you, but Emma suddenly jumped up as time was running out. "I have to leave now," Jack said. "Emma, please," as she arrived at the door. "I know I don't." Emma stopped, turning around, "so perhaps I don't deserve it, but might we have a longer conversation?" Emma felt emotionally spent when she left the hospital, and I know I should consider that. Emma was at the airport when her phone rang, and she answered, lamenting that it was work. Frank was yelling commands at her while his face was flushed with rage. "Where have you gone, Wilson?" "There's a problem here." Emma saw Melissa, Frank's mistress, appeared to be making a nervous stand in the corner, unpredictable choices, shouting at staff, and disregarding safety procedures. Emma attempted to step in. "Perhaps we should adhere to protocol." Frank turned to face her, his eyes flaming. "You want to instruct me on how to conduct my work in a risky way, Wilson." "Emma," so I backed off. The remainder of the shift was tense because everyone was watching her and Frank was always around, making disparaging remarks against her at the end of the day. Worn out, and when Emma, under stress, discovered Liam in the locker room, he murmured softly, "How's the finally?" After all the stress of the day, Emma broke down in tears in the hospital. Liam gave her an enormous hug and let her cry on his shoulder, saying Emma sobbed as she fled to keep her safe. "But how is leaving your family safe?" Liam gave her a gentle back rub, acknowledging that mistakes are occasionally made. Emma withdrew, wiping her eyes, believing they were doing the right thing. "And now he's dying, and I'm not sure how to feel about it." Liam comforted her that it's okay. "You have time to think about all of this." Emma nodded, appreciating Liam's comprehension. Liam grinned and said, "I don't know what I'd do without you right now." That's what friends are. For the following morning, Emma's heart was heavy as she stood in front of Sarah's grave at the cemetery. Simple tombstones stood in stark contrast to the nuanced feelings she was experiencing, which included memories of her early years. Sarah's soothing smile while preparing pancakes for breakfast filled her thoughts. "I apologize, Mom Emma, for working so hard to sustain them after a nightmare. I should have been there for you," she said in a whisper. Caressing the cold stone, a recognizable voice cried out, "Emma, is that really you?" As I stood there, lost in contemplation, Emma turned around and embraced Margaret, an old friend of her mother's, unexpected comfort brought by a familiar gesture. "It's been so long, Margaret." Emma gulped hard and smiled sadly. "Sarah would be so thrilled to see you here. I simply didn't know how to manage anything, Margaret, so I should have arrived sooner." "Your mother understood, sweetheart. She always talked about you." I gave her a little hug on the shoulder. Even after I separated myself, Emma asked about the guilt with such pride that noticeable in her tone, particularly when Margaret said, "I knew you were finding your way is difficult, but Sarah never gave up hope since you know it's not in you or you." Jack Emma gave Margaret a startled glance, but she hoped he would return, nodded all the way to the end. "She always said that you would all be together one day." Once more, Margaret's remarks increased Emma's sense of guilt for her absence. Was going to reply when she saw Liam, a recognizable person, coming. "What are you doing here, Liam?" Liam grinned hesitantly and apologized for his appearance. "Was worried about you," and Emma sensed a wave. "So I assumed you would need a companion." Margaret observed the exchange and expressed her gratitude to Liam, which meant a lot, with a sly smile. "I'll leave you too, Emma. Please don't act like a stranger." Following Margaret's departure, Emma and Liam strolled across the graveyard in cozy silence. "How are you feeling?" Liam asked Emma at last, and she sighed sincerely and felt horrible. Confounded all at once, Liam took her hand and gave her a light squeeze, which is understandably, "You're going through a lot." Emma started crying, and I should have been there to support her, Liam, and now that it's too late. Liam embraced her, allowing, "Hey, don't say that your mom knew you loved her," she sobbed on his shoulder. What is important is that Emma saw a cardboard box as they were leaving. "What's this?" Liam said. "I brought it to the grave." Margaret claimed there were. Emma gently opened the box and discovered certain items your mother wanted you to have. She opened a worn-out journal with old letters and pictures in it, and her eyes, Liam murmured, "Look at these journal entries as you scan the pages." Shown Sarah's continued devotion to Jack over the years of his Sarah had written about her steadfast conviction that one day the Emma closed the journal, feeling completely spent, knowing that her family would be reunited, never gave up on him despite anything, and Liam put her another hug. "Unconditional love for you two is something that is uncommon and valuable." Emma felt more centered at the airport, but she was still unsure of how to handle Jack because her thoughts were diverted. Claire came up, looking worried, asking if Emma could speak with her for a moment, nodding in guilt. "Of course, sir." "What's the matter, Claire?" "Frank has been acting strangely recently. becoming increasingly agitated. "Has anything caught your attention at work, secretive?" Emma's stomach turned since she recognized the truth. But how could she explain it to Claire? Emma stumbled, "So I'm not sure. It seemed a touch tense recently." Claire briefly observed her. Emma, if you know anything, please let me know so I can deal with the truth." When her phone chimed, she was about to confess everything. It was a note from Frank apologizing for the crucial security operation and the emergency meeting. Feeling conflicted, Emma replied, "I have to leave. Can we talk later?" Claire nodded. Emma hurried to the conference room, her heart heavy with secrets. Despite her dejected expression, unsolved disputes. Emma saw Frank in the front of the room when she walked in. "We have a critical situation where a large-scale security operation is going to occur, and we must be prepared." Frank learned the airport was on high alert. Emma is part of his squad for an emergency operation because a strong storm is coming. Frank spoke hastily, his expression tight. "We must evacuate the airport and guarantee the security of everyone." Emma felt the burden of accountability fall on her. Without observing how he steered clear of her, she watched Frank issue directions over her shoulders. "Frank, you will organize the evacuation of the main terminal." Gazzy Wilson instructed to maintain everyone's composure and plan the departure. Emma nodded, swallowing her. Despite her unease and lack of faith in Frank, she understood that passenger safety had to first. Emma met Liam on her way to her post, and he drew her aside. He said, "Be careful. Something about this operation doesn't feel right." "Emma, keep your eyes open," she said, agreeing with her gut's advice. The following few hours were tumultuous as Emma organized terrified passengers, lines and communicated with other groups. Her radio was always crackling with updates regarding the impending storm. Frank unexpectedly showed up behind her. "Wilson, please examine the baggage claim area. There might be passengers there who are lost." So Emma hesitated. Frank shook his head. "There's no time for that. We concentrate on the primary evacuation." Conversations continue, and Emma hesitantly made her way to baggage claim as soon as she felt something wasn't right when she walked in. But there were no passengers who were lost, she remarked over the radio silence. "Stacks of boxes, Frank. I don't see anyone here." Emma heard voices behind some crates she noticed just as she was ready to leave. Frank murmured, "The documents are here," as he entered with an unidentified man. Nobody knows that Frank was involved in anything that made Emma's heart race as she opened a parcel. Before she could comprehend what she had seen, her radio crackled, and she had just witnessed something fishy. "Emma, please evacuate immediately as the storm has gotten stronger." She arrived at the terminal. She rushed out of the luggage area, her head spinning from what she had discovered. She encountered turmoil, with Jack arguing in the center of the commotion. Emma said, "I need to talk to my daughter Jack." Angrily with a security guard, Emma hesitated, caught between her duty and the surprise of seeing Wilson, who works here. Frank, her father, arrived breathless. "What's going on here? This man is disturbing people," the security officer clarified, stating that he is an employee's father. Frank glanced at Jack. "Wilson, do you know this man?" Emma hesitated as he narrowed his gaze at her. Weight of everyone's attention on her. "Yes," she at last murmured. My father." Frank, looking furious, stormed through the crowd and commanded, "Get him out of here." The security guy paused, but Emma stepped in and allowed me to speak with him. Emma nodded grudgingly and drew Jack aside, pointing out the curious stares. "Emma, I wanted to see you." "Are you doing here?" she growled at Jack, who appeared desperate. Emma felt a mixture of rage and sympathy after our conversation at the hospital, and I understood I couldn't waste any more time. "We're in an emergency evacuation, Dad. But now isn't the time." I understand that Jack sounded remorseful, but I must apologize to you because Emma's eyes started to well up with tears, and I want to make things right if you'll give me a chance. A loud bang interrupted the response, causing the lights to flicker and the structure to tremble from the impact. "Storm, everyone remain calm," she yelled as she attempted to plan the evacuation. In the midst of the confusion, Emma noticed Frank sprinting in the direction of baggage claim. She followed him without realizing it. "What are you doing?" Frank asked, startled. "Wilson responded to your article," but Emma refused to back down, revealing the whole situation. "What are you hiding, Frank?" I saw you earlier in baggage claim. Don't get that I had no other option before Emma could react with a louder crash. When the dust hit the structure, a portion of the ceiling fell, separating them. After settling in, Emma got up and coughed. Frank was gone, so she searched about, confused, and noticed Jack sprinting in her direction. "Emma, are you okay?" he said. "Help me." Emma stood up and nodded, still in a trance. "Dad, you have to leave," she said. Dangerous Jack shook his head, saying, "I won't abandon you now, sirens." Emma knew the next few hours would be filled with blaring rescue teams flooding the airport, would be crucial. She glanced at Jack first, then at the commotion surrounding her. Frank went missing when the operation ended in tragedy, and she was ensnared with her father having recently returned to her life. Emma taking a long breath, aware that the choices she made now would influence not just her career prospects, as well as her friendship with Jack and her own integrity. "Let's leave," she said at last, adding that the next day we must assist the others. When the hurricane hit, the airport was in disarray, with debris all over the place, and flights were cancelled. And irate travelers had a difficult. Emma assumed command of the team and was determined to bring order back. "I know that last night was difficult, but our passengers depend on us," Emma added. "Let's gather the personnel and concentrate on." Her decisive approach was recognized as she cleaned the main sections and restored vital activities. Co-workers who had previously viewed her as merely another worker began to admire her as she oversaw the while cleaning up the main terminal. Emma noticed a familiar face assisting with rubble. Her father, Jack, was working with the airport employees. "What are?" Emma replied. "What are you doing here?" Jack smiled wearily. "And I assumed you all could use a helping hand, and I wanted to check on you." Emma felt conflicted, with appreciation and perplexity. This man, who was only a few days earlier a stranger, "I'm assisting now without being asked." "Thank you," she remarked plainly before leaving. During the day, Emma observed Jack interacting with other employees. As they exchanged tales and words of support, she couldn't help but observe how different he appeared from as her recuperation advanced. There were reports of a man who had deserted her years prior. When the internal probe began, Emma heard whispers. Liam spoke to Emma during a conversation regarding Frank's concerns and some dubious choices made throughout the crisis. Emma nodded, remembering. "Hey, did you hear sounds like Frank's in trouble?" I don't think he was shocked by what she had seen in the storage room, displaying odd behavior throughout the evacuation. Liam further reduced his speech while assisting with the accounting. "I discovered some inconsistencies in the financial reports that don't add up." Emma's gut churned at the thought of the disparities. Unreasonable costs, dubious contracts, nothing definitive but sufficient. Emma was pulled into an emergency to raise concerns before she could react to meeting. She could feel the tension in the room as soon as she walked in. They were anxious, as did the other directors and a man she knew from Human Resources. Miss Wilson, the HR representative, started by saying, "We would like to thank you for your thanked you for your outstanding leadership throughout and after the crisis." He felt that there was more to come. "But we are looking into the choices that were made. We would like to hear your stories about what happened during the evacuation." Emma looked at. She understood that what she said may have major consequences. So Frank avoided looking at her. "Consequences, of course," she answered, attempting to maintain a steady tone of voice. "Where should I begin?" By summarizing what happened the night before, omitting what for the time being she had observed Frank developing in the storage room. After the meeting, Emma became more irritated and exhausted. Jack was waiting for her in the corridor, both emotionally and physically. "Is everything okay?" he asked. His voice was filled with concern, and Emma was hesitant to share. Despite her misgivings and suspicions, she found it difficult to trust this man who had unexpectedly returned to her life. "It's complicated," she said at last. Jack nodded, realizing that. "I'm not authorized to ask for your trust, however. I want you to know that no matter what, Emma, I'm always here for you." Jack's words were so sincere that I could feel the tears streaming down my face. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered. "Emma, we must." As Liam suddenly showed signs of anxiety, talk about how Emma felt after looking at those financial reports from Liam to Jack. Jack bears the burden of her obligations and the tense relationships. Emma nodded appreciatively as she murmured softly, "I'll be here if you need me." For Jack's comprehension, she knew she was going to go deeper after Liam. When they were by themselves, Emma inquired, "What did you find out about the complexities at the airport?" Liam presented her with a number of documents that looked at this year's unwarranted expenditures and agreements with dummy corporations. Frank has been preparing the books for a while. Emma felt as though everything was spinning around her, huge, and before she could comprehend it completely, her phone rang. It was Human Resources. Miss Wilson, please provide a formal statement tomorrow about feeling the weight of the recent events and Mr. Frank's supervision. Emma hung up. Suddenly, she glanced at Liam and then at the papers she was holding. What are we going to do? Emma took a deep breath and said, "We're going to do the right thing." In response to Liam's question, Emma's heart was racing as she walked into the conference room. Regardless of the expense, Frank was present as well, and his look was serious when the investigating committee sat down and stared at her, mixture of terror and entreaty. "Miss Wilson, please tell us what happened on the." Emma inhaled deeply as the lead investigator started the night of the storm. Evacuation. As Emma spoke, I observed various inconsistencies in Mr. Frank's instructions, felt that every sentence she spoke could have dire repercussions. Suddenly, a memory flashed for the entire airport, not just for Frank. She imagined that Jack was taking her for a walk in the park when she was 8 years old. Park. Emma's beloved Jack would advise her to always speak the truth, no matter how difficult it may be. Emma resumed her story, describing what she had seen in the present, of Frank's dubious commands, and the storage room after the session. Emma left fatigued, and Jack was. He asked Emma gently, "How did it go?" while he waited for her in the corridor. Emma hesitated. That was difficult, but I made the correct decision. And Jack grinned proudly. "You've always been resilient." Emma cried when she was 10 years old, much like your mother. "I apologize, sweetie, for missing Jack's school performance," he responded. "It's complicated, with real regret," and Emma shook her head. SN. Returning to the present, Jack groaned. "Why did you always put work first?" "I believed I was taking the best possible care of our family, but I discovered too late that I was. We found more." Emma. But before Emma could reply, Liam showed up. Emma glanced at Jack and said, "I have to leave, but I'll be here if you need me." Responded with comprehension. Emma trailed Liam into a tiny, firelit chamber and Liam pointed to the screen. After years of dubious computer use, Emma sensed that Frank had been transferring money into foreign accounts. "How much?" "Millions," Liam said in a hushed voice. Made her stomach turn. "And there's more." Emma closed her eyes and recalled the vast scheme of expensive contracts and bribes. How could she have been, given everything Frank had spoken about morality and ethics? Emma responded resolutely, "So blind. We need to take this to the committee." Liam nodded. "It will be difficult, but that doesn't matter because Frank has a lot of strong friends." While gathering evidence, Emma said it was right, recalled another instance when she was 12 years old and Jack was teaching her how to ride a bike. "Emma, don't be scared to fall." He would say that what matters most is to. Emma had a fresh perspective on Jack from that memory. Always get up and try again. Hours went by, and although he may not have been the ideal father, he made an effort. Emma and Liam thoroughly investigated the matter, revealing layer after layer of corruption. Why wasn't this noticed earlier? Emma said in frustration. Frank was clever. He kept everyone occupied and distracted so that nobody looked. Liam groaned too closely. Emma sensed a mixture of resolve and rage building inside her. When they were done, it was late at night, and Emma departed. "We are presently investigating and will reveal everything." The room, weary but resolute, she confronted Frank in the corridor. Wilson's voice was a mixture of dread and rage as he said, "We need to talk." Because Emma crossed her arms. "Frank, we have nothing to discuss. Everything will be resolved by the Franks is being threatened by an official probe. Are you sure you want to leave? Do you recall the incident involving the VIP passenger 2 years ago down this road? Believe your career will endure if it turns out to be true." Emma was shivering after the incident. Frank was. Although it was an honest error, it may be twisted to appear as Emma's voice trembled as she said, "Are you threatening me?" Frank grinned slightly but without humor, saying, "I'm giving you a way out." Step away from. Emma hesitated to pursue her profession after the probe, and we all emerged clear. The stakes were high for everything she had worked for. But then she recalled Jack's "No, Frank," she answered, referring to the lessons he had attempted to teach her about ethics. Last, her voice remained calm. "Do as you please. I won't leave you, Frank." Wilson. Emma had been up all night, and he narrowed his eyes, saying, "You'll regret this." The threat of disclosing her past was echoed in her mind by wide-awake Frank's statements. Error plagued her, causing her to doubt each choice she made she got to the airport earlier than usual in the morning, and the building was as usual, felt stifling in her workplace. Emma gazed at the stack of evidence against Frank, and with her future hanging in the balance on those documents, Liam interrupted. "Emma, are you okay? You appear to have not slept, as Frank threatened." Liam frowned when she told me last night that he was aware of the situation involving the VIP passenger. "That wasn't your fault. It was a sincere error, but Emma was in the wrong hands," left the phrase open-ended. "What are you going to do?" Liam questioned in a soft yet forceful tone. "I'm not sure if my career may disappear if I expose Frank, but if I remain silent, you won't be the Emma." I am aware that Liam had just ended when Emma's phone called, and it was Jack. Jack's voice sounded faint, and Emma's heart said, "You come pick me up? I'm not feeling well." "Raced, of course, Dad. I'm leaving." She glanced at Liam. "I have to." Liam nodded and said, "I'll take care of things here while she's on her way to." Emma couldn't stop reflecting on how her life had suddenly turned complicated just a few weeks prior while she was in Jack's place. Now that Jack was only a distant memory, she began to worry. When Emma got to the building, she discovered Jack seated on the pale and breathless. She asked her father what had happened and assisted him in "There's nothing to worry about," Jack said, attempting to smile. His feet just a little light-headed. Jack glanced at Emma in the hospital while they awaited the test results, with weary eyes. "I apologize for this, honey. I understand that you're dealing with a lot." Emma felt a knot in her throat at work. "Don't worry about it, Dad." Jack grasped her hand and said, "There's something I need to do, since health comes first. Explain to you why I left in the past. I didn't." But Emma prepared herself for years of unresolved questions between them. "Quit just because of the obligations Jack started, since there were potentially harmful individuals after I was worried about your safety." And Emma, your mother, started crying. "Why?" Jack answered in an emotional voice. "Didn't you ever tell us? I felt I was protecting you by keeping away. It was too late for me to comprehend that you truly needed me to be there." As Emma talked, she started to view her father differently. The brokenness and absences pledges all took on a new identity for me, meaning that even though I was far away, I made an effort to. I paid money privately to make sure you were secure, Emma, and you went on. Jack remembered the enigmatic checks that came in the most unexpected times, the strangers who appeared to assist in challenging circumstances. "That were you," she said, and Jack nodded incredulously. "I wanted to do more, but I was worried about endangering you too. So a doctor came put it briefly, Mr. Wilson, we must do a few more tests." Since Emma was taken away from Jack, it appears that your heart is weaker than we initially believed. Alone with her thoughts, she realized that everything had altered after Jack's revelation. Had always thought of him as the one who left them, but now she understood that he had made unimaginable sacrifices. When her phone buzzed, Liam Frank's message was there, urging a meeting. Emma closed her eyes. "And we must determine what to do with the evidence tomorrow." Feeling the consequences of her decisions on one side and her security and career on the other, Emma observed justice and other truths outside the hospital window. Families arriving and going, lives entwined in happy and sad times. She considered Jack's unspoken sacrifices and his attempts in his flawed method to act morally. Emma took a deep breath and decided regardless of the personal repercussions, she knew what she had to do to hold Frank accountable for his acts. Liam received a typed response from Emma saying, "Let's expose everything. It's time for Frank to face." Emma had a mix of relief and terror as soon as she pushed submit. Even though she was aware that the path ahead would be difficult, she felt it was the correct one. A nurse suddenly hurried over to her, appearing frightened. "Miss Wilson, it's your father. He's got a problem. We need you right now." Emma's heart was beating. Had recently made a choice that would alter her career, and now her Emma felt the weight of everything as she ran through the hospital hallways, her personal life also appearing to be falling apart. She had made the decision to confront the pressures of her past and present choices, Frank, but now worried that she might not have much time left with her father. Before she reached the Emma noticed a medical staff urgently working around Jack in the emergency room. Parent, who had just moments before appeared to be getting well, was now battling for Emma's mind was racing with so many emotions that she halted at the door and ideas. She was aware that the upcoming hours would be crucial, not just for Jack's health, but Emma spent the night in the hospital for her own future. observing the hours pass slowly as Jack's heart monitor changes with each beep of the mechanism that serves as a reminder of how fleeting life is. At daybreak, Jack opened his eyes, and Emma leaned down and held her father's hand, her voice clear but faint. "I'm here, Dad." Emma gently interrupted Jack as he attempted to sit up, telling him not to strain himself. "Jack urged that I tell you everything while I still had, so I need to rest." Emma felt a knot in her throat, but she nodded and listened as Jack started talking. He informed her about the debts that caused him to become involved with risky situations, his voice growing stronger with each word. People were afraid of Emma and her mother, and he received threats. Jack clarified with tears in his eyes that he believed that leaving was the best way to keep you two safe, his eyes, but each day spent apart from you was agony. And Emma listened as she felt years of "why didn't you ever tell us that I was frightened they would arrive?" Anger and hurt fade. Jack responded after you asked if they knew we were in communication, so I observed from a distance, doing my best to assist without drawing attention to myself. Jack talked about the positions he surreptitiously secured for Emma. Several times he protected her without her knowledge, such as the day you were 10 years old and nearly got struck by a. Emma gasped when Jack remarked, "I was there to save you. It wasn't a coincidence." "I always assumed it was a stranger, Jack. When I thought back to the incident that included you, I tried to keep you safe at all times, Emma, and I was never truly that far away." From a distance, Emma and Jack's tears suddenly came freely after years of "I'm very glad that miscommunications and unresolved pain were finally being healed. I'm sorry, Dad." Emma cried. "I was upset for a long time because I didn't understand Jack. I'm the one who apologizes. I should have found a way to grip her hand. I would have been better off trusting you and your mother." At that very moment, when Emma sensed the after years of bitterness, she no longer viewed her father as the man who left them behind, but as someone who has always attempted to. "I hope you can forgive me too," Emma added quietly. "I forgive you, Dad, for protecting her. There's nothing to forgive, my love. You've always been there for me." Jack grinned peacefully. "It had been my pride." When Emma's phone rang persistently after the father and daughter made amends, "You must return to the airport for the investigation into Liam." Emma. "Frank has reached a breaking point," and Emma paused before turning to face Jack, who nodded, recognizing, "Go ahead and do your tasks. I'll be waiting for you when you return to the." Emma arrived at the airport to a tumultuous scene, with reporters crowding the entrance, and police. Liam hurried to her with the evidence we collected after escorting Frank out of the building. Frank's arrest for fraud and corruption was sufficient, and Emma observed the moment, mixed feelings arising in her breast. Relief that the truth had arrived, as well as a pang of sorrow at the shameful passing of someone she once considering. How appalling the level of corruption is. Liam carried on for years of fraudulent contracts, bribery, and embezzlement are all being exposed. Emma nodded, taking in the facts. "What's going on at the airport?" "The board is currently at their appointment. Liam wanted to discuss next steps with you." Integrity throughout this entire circumstance has been acknowledged, and Emma experienced a mixture of pride and anxiety. She was prepared to face the difficult days that lay ahead. After many hours of consultations and declarations, Emma returned to the hospital. She went into Jack's room and saw him seated by his bed, soundly asleep. Emma thought back on the reunion and the events of the previous few days while she was in bed. The disclosures regarding her past and Jack Frank's demise seemed too unreal. Jack opened his eyes slowly and said, "You're back." Emma smiled and held his hand. Naturally, Jack asked Emma how the airport was, and she informed him about Frank's arrest. Jack carefully listened to the disclosures on the corruption, which showed pride in "I always knew you'd be strong, Emma, and you did the right thing, in his opinion, enough to confront injustice." Emma started crying. "I discovered this from the greatest father." Jack grinned, but Emma saw that he was losing his hold on her hand. "I'm exhausted, sweetheart," he whispered gently. "Relax, Dad. I'll be right there." Emma felt a tightness in her chest. "I'm always proud of you, Emma." Here Jack closed his eyes, and his breathing slowed. Amid Emma's emotional breakdown as Jack fell asleep, thankfulness for the reconciliation, sorrow over the time wasted, and a feeling of calm and completion. Emma phoned for the nurses as Jack's heart monitor started to slow down, but Emma held Jack's hand and said, "I love you," knowing it was time to say goodbye. Jack breathed his last delicate breath and died away quietly, thanking his father for everything. Emma sat there with quiet tears running down her cheeks, a faint smile on his lips, face that she had lost her father once more. But this time she had forgiven him and enjoyed gazing out the hospital window, where Emma witnessed the dawn of a new day, was starting to bring chances and challenges with a heavy heart, but empowered by Jack's affection and teachings, Emma knew she was prepared to handle anything. Then her phone rang, indicating that it was from the airport. Life continued, and Emma had a new path forward, formed by her own bravery and inspired by her father's legacy options 2 weeks following Jack's death. Emma went back to the airport where there had previously been tension. The mood had significantly shifted, and Liam met mistrust with a feeling of freshness and expectation. He smiled warmly and said, "Welcome back," to her in the main lobby. Emma was taken aback by the unplanned applause as she walked into the conference room where she was waiting for you. Mr. Anderson, the new interim director, approached Emma from her co-workers. "Your bravery and honesty throughout the situation were admirable. So we'd want to urge you to head a special task force that aims to totally transform." Emma was moved by the airport security procedures, and I'm grateful. In the weeks that followed, Emma immersed herself in her work, spending hours studying protocols and thanking you for your trust, interviewing employees and creating fresh tactics as she went. She frequently found herself reflecting on Jack and the principles he had attempted to impart to her. Therefore, we require a training program that does not merely imparts knowledge of procedures. Emma also discussed ideals in a meeting. Liam, integrity, compassion, and alertness are the cornerstones of true security. Who had joined the task squad as her right-hand guy nodded in agreement. That brings to mind something you said about your father, who said. Emma remembered talking to Jack in the ICU and grinned. Yes, he always said, because doing the right thing even when no one is looking is where true strength lies. Emma became aware that she was not just reforming as the new program took shape, the airport, but the legal battle against Frank was also a tribute to Jack's legacy, moving forward. And Emma was asked to testify while seated on the witness stand. With a mixture of sympathy and resolve, she confronted her old boss, Mr. Frank, who mistreated his. Emma forcefully stated that his actions damaged not only the airport but also his position of trust, not only cost money but also damaged the confidence of all subsequent employees. Emma discovered Liam waiting outside the courtroom where you were testifying, he replied. Amazing in there. Emma felt warmth radiate through her as he took her hand. Her connection with Liam had changed during the previous 6 months from co-workers to something more profound. She was still negotiating these unfamiliar waters, but she felt receptive to the prospect of a shared future for the first time in a long time. Emma saw the developments at the airport with satisfaction. Previously unmotivated staff members now approached their work with fresh enthusiasm, saying, "It's amazing to see the difference." Sarah, a veteran. Emma nodded. "I feel like we're finally making a real impact," security officer. Experiencing a wave of pride because we can all change things. What we're creating here. Emma started to see noticeable changes after the new training program was put into place. Passenger satisfaction rose, security incidents declined, and employee one day, as Emma was passing through the terminal, morale was at an all-time high. Heard 2 passengers conversing. "This airport has changed," so a lot of kids commented. "I feel really safe here now." And the staff concurred, as so considerate that it seems like they truly care. Emma grinned to herself. On a calm afternoon, Emma noticed that every little change was having a significant impact. Discovered herself at Frank's former office, which has been converted into a training facility. She thought back on the path that had led her here as she peered out the window. Silently, Liam walked in and put his hand on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" Emma's eyes were full of unshed tears as she turned to face how much everything had altered. Liam gave her a gentle embrace, saying, "You've done something amazing here. I've changed a lot." Emma nodded, feeling a mix of want and pride that Jack would be proud of. "Thank you. I only wish he could see it." Liam told her through you that he does. Through each life you touch here, Emma experienced a profound sense of she had achieved peace by striking a balance between respecting the past and creating the through her deeds. Future Jack's legacy endured, and she was committed to continuing to have an impact in the months that followed. Emma remained at the forefront of she established mentoring programs with empathy and honesty, urging older employees to mentor new hires. She created an open channels of communication at every organizational level, guaranteeing that each one day at an award ceremony, Emma's voice was heard as she was invited to the stage by Emma as he presented Emma with an award for excellence in leadership. Anderson grinned. Wilson declared that he had changed not just our processes but also our culture. She reminded us that safety is about people and regulations. Emma looked out into the audience after accepting the award and saw eyes and smiles. She viewed Liam as her continual source of respect and affection, support grinning with pride, and she briefly claimed to have seen Jack standing at the Emma nodded in agreement from the back of the room, saying, "This award isn't just mine. Into the microphone is ours, and everyone who chooses to do the proper thing that truly cares and strives to improve our area." Each and every Emma experienced a profound sense of joy as the audience applauded, realizing she had turned the suffering of her past into a purposeful future. The airport used to be an emblem of strife and corruption, but now stood for integrity and hope. Emma understood that although there will always be new difficulties, they will be bolstered by Jack's teachings, Liam's encouragement, and her own inner strength. Emma was prepared to confront them with a resolute smile, moving forward, prepared to carry on with her transformational journey one day at a time. I sincerely hope that this tale moved and motivated you as much as it encouraged us to make it. If Emma, Jack, and Liam's journey moved you, please let us know. Give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments section. We value your input. What more stories would you like to hear? Remember to subscribe to the channel for more touching stories, tales like this one, which recall how Emma learned that our biggest struggles may occasionally be turned into our greatest assets. See you in the following tale.